Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast with yours truly, Craig, and joining me today is Vince. How are things, Vince?
Yeah, they're pretty good, Craig. I know we haven't taped for about 6 weeks. It's been a little bit of a gut punch here to end the 2024 Brewers season. So yeah, we're going to call this the depression management episode.
Yeah, a lot of bad things have happened since October 1st, unfortunately. But yeah, unfortunately I was there firsthand to witness the Brewers lose both their wild card games. Those are the two games I picked to attend. So I apologize to our fan base. I also attended game one of the wild card last year, which they also lost. So it's not going too well. Yeah, it was disappointing. And I mean, again, this Brewer team overachieved beyond anyone's expectations in 2024. I had a great team, nice young core, a lot of guys breaking out and really seeing some excitement for the future. But with that being said, anytime you have an opportunity to make the playoffs as the Milwaukee Brewers franchise, you got to hope that they take full advantage of that, and they did not do that this year. Unfortunately, we got bounced by the Mets, and it seemed like we had a victory almost at hand in the wild card round, and then it was snatched when Devin Williams blew a 2-run lead going in the bottom of the ninth and gave up a 3-run home run to Pete Alonso, and that was all she wrote. And unfortunately, the Brewers season came to an unceremonious end. So, in spite of a great season, that was pretty disappointing. What were your thoughts on seeing how the playoffs played out and the Dodgers eventually winning the World Series? The Brewers making a run, and the Mets did go all the way to the NL Championship round themselves. So,
yeah, obviously disappointed with how things turned out. I think you and I may have disagreed a little, and we talked about this on probably our last podcast. But I think this was not a World Championship level Brewers team, in my mind at least. I think that this was a team that did overachieve a bit. I don't think that we necessarily had the depth to win it all this year. That being said, I absolutely thought that we were a better team than the Mets. And I really, just as a fan, I mean, I really wanted us and expected us to win the first round at least this year and kind of get that monkey off of our back. We haven't advanced past the first round, obviously, as Brewer fans know, if you're listening to this podcast, since our defeat of the Rockies in 2018. So, it's been a little while now at this point. And with first round exits in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2023, and now 2024, it is a serious issue for this franchise now to be looking at and figure out ways to overcome it. Ironically, the issue that I thought was going to give us the most fits was our starting pitching. I didn't think that we had the depth that some other teams did, but our starting pitching actually held up okay. It seemed like our offense had issues in, game one, and then in game three we had some offensive output, but then it was our lockdown bullpen that unfortunately blew it. So it seems like every year there's something that causes us to have to figure out a different finger on a different hand to plug a different leak, even in areas that were normally strong. And Devin Williams, by all accounts, he had an injury this year obviously, but by all accounts, physically and otherwise, he's one of the best closers in baseball. And to be up by 2 runs and be looking at Devin Williams coming to that game, that's as close to a lockdown situation that you could possibly have. But I guess nothing is really locked down in the playoffs until it's done. And, we saw that with other great closers too. I think Emmanuel Clase blew 2 games in that Cleveland Yankees series. So it's not like it's unheard of, but it's just frustrating. And, to me, and I think we're going to get to this as we get into this episode a little bit more, it may be a reason, ironically, not to trade Devin Williams. I think that we need to bolster our bullpen. I don't know if we want to be subtracting from it at this point, but anyways, to answer your question, obviously disappointment with how things literally turned out with the first round of the playoffs. And I would say after being able to step back a little bit here with some perspective, over the last 6 weeks. Overall, I'd give this Brewers team an A on the season, despite the end result and despite the fact that we want that world championship for the first time ever. And it's heartbreaking not to get that, but I still think that this team overachieved. They're a really young team. They're an exciting team. They stepped up in ways that I wasn't expecting this year, and it was a fun team to watch, and it was a joy to watch this team over the course of a 6-7 month long season.
Yeah, and I don't want this to sound like sour grapes, but I do think MLB has got a problem. I think that the wild card 3-game format does not. The best team does not advance from a 3-game series in baseball all the time. And I think that that's a problem with the wild card round. Now, obviously, you'd be like, well, 1 game is just, kind of a coin flip anyways, the old format. But I think they either need to make it a 1 or a 5-game series still, in my opinion. I don't know that they're going to listen to me, but I think that's a problem going forward. But focusing back on the
20... why not do best of 7, just all the way through? That could be, I guess it would extend the postseason an extra week, but you'd at least you'd have the best teams advancing. That being said, there is something to the excitement, of a shorter series too. So I think you could go both ways, and it would also expose teams like, I don't know that. I don't know what baseball is going to do. I think you could probably argue that a number of different ways, but I know that they advanced the NLCS. I do think that the Brewers were better than the Mets this year. Let me just say that, and I think that our final record against the Mets in the regular season was 7-1, 6-1, 7-1, something like that. We can have Scott's interns look that up, but I think we were 7-1 against the Mets in the regular season.
Yeah, so it's unfortunately it was crushingly disappointing. And again, I don't want to overstate this. The Brewers have been a franchise now since 1970, and we have won as a franchise 3 playoff series. We beat the California Angels in 1982 to get to the World Series. Back then, that was the only round before the World Series. We have beaten the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2011 with the Nyjer Morgan walk-off. And we beat the Colorado Rockies in 2018. Yeah. And that's it. And so even though we made the playoffs all these other times in the last decade, we've got very little to show for it. And I think this needs to change. With that being said, going back to your letter grade on the 2024 Milwaukee Brewers, I am not going to argue with that. I mean, like I said, we did overachieve. I don't think anyone going into the year expected us to finish the way that we did and run away with the division like we did. But with that being said, and I guess kudos to General Manager Matt Arnold, who was awarded the MLB Executive of the Year, actually. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, congrats, Matt. And hey, Craig, really quick on your last point, I also should say, even this was our 55th year in Milwaukee as a franchise. Actually, 5th year in Milwaukee, 56th year as a franchise, going back to the 1 year in Seattle with the Pilots. And this was the 10th playoff appearance, I guess, for the franchise in total. So it's not a long and illustrious postseason history.
No, but even out of 10 playoff appearances, only winning 3 total series. I mean, the Mets probably won two of their 3 series this year. I mean, we've never even won more than 1 playoff series in any given year. That's a little bit alarming. And
do you think that the Brewers have like the most, and obviously we're biased as Brewer fans, but amongst all MLB teams without a world championship, do you think that the Brewers history is sort of the most, I don't want to use the word pathetic, but tragic? I mean, is it rising to that level?
As a Brewer fan, I would say, yeah, it is the most tragic, and I mean, we're biased with that, but so maybe that's a stupid question, but you know what I'm trying to get at? Like, the Padres have been a team since, whenever they're roughly around the same age as the Brewers, and they don't have one. There's other teams. The Rangers got the monkey off their back in 2023, and it just seems like a lot of teams, have had more success overall. Even Tampa Bay has been to more World Series than the Brewers, and Tampa has only been a franchise since, 1998. It's frustrating, man. Well, I mean, Seattle Mariner fans would probably like to have a word with us, but besides that,
but they were after us. They were started in 1977. That was a response to the Pilots leaving. So yes, I agree. But they also and they do have a pretty tragic history considering the great teams that they had in the 90s and early 2000s and not having world championship to show for it. But just saying that they are younger as well.
Yeah. No, and that's a terrible to think about. But yeah, it sure feels that way as a longtime Brewer fan. But yeah, it's unfortunate. So a couple other hardware that was been given out. Now we're still waiting for manager of the year, and we've got Pat Murphy standing by, hopefully for that to receive that
Yep.
award. But hopefully next podcast I'll have an update on that. But we do want to congratulate William Trask got the Silver Slugger Award, Sal Frelick,
Yep.
Gold Glove Award, and Bryce Turang. So between Turang and Frelick, both real young guys, winning the Gold Glove Award. This is the first time that two Brewers have won Gold Glove Awards in the same season since.
Yeah, 1979 from the Brewers history department here. Note here from Scotty's intern. The last time the two Brewers won the Gold Glove Award in the same season was 1979 with Cecil Cooper winning the award at first base and Sixto Lescano, Brewers right fielder that season, winning the award there. So yeah, pretty impressive. First Brewers to win the Gold Glove at all since Lorenzo Cain in 2019. And keep in mind, Craig, I know that we talked about this a bit during our pre-production meeting, but the Brewers do not have a long and illustrious history with Gold Glove award winnings. Between Robin Yount winning in 1982 and Carlos Gomez winning in 2013, the Brewers actually had nobody win a Gold Glove award. So getting two in the same season is pretty impressive.
Absolutely, and not only that, but it really
let's put it this way: nine different Brewers have won a Gold Glove in franchise history. Two of those were this year.
Pretty impressive, and it really goes to show that 2024 Brewers were built on defense and how valuable the defense was to the pitching and to the overall success of the team. I mean, I think that's one part of baseball that gets overlooked with this, in this era of big time stats and fantasy baseball stuff. I really think defense gets overlooked, but not by our GM Matt Arnold, obviously. And so kudos to building the team that's really built on great defense. I mean, we literally have several shortstops around the infield and several center fielders in the outfield. Really, I mean, there's no better way to build a defense than that, in my opinion. So.
No, I completely agree. And, also exciting, there was actually a new award that was won for the first time in franchise history by Bryce Turang as well, called the Platinum Glove, which I'm sure you're aware of, Craig, but just for our listeners' edification, that is an award that was started by Major League Baseball in 2011. And that is the Platinum Glove is given to the best Gold Glove winner. So it's the best fielder amongst the best fielders across Major League Baseball. And Bryce Turang won that award this year. So that's the first time in franchise history that has been accomplished by a Milwaukee Brewer.
That's amazing. Congratulations to Bryce. With that being said, I also, there was some talk about, as crazy a thing about this, would it shock you that the 2024 Brewers opening day lineup features both Sal Frelick and Bryce Turang at different positions than that they won their Gold Gloves at in 2024?
You mean the 2025 lineup?
Yeah, 2025 lineup.
I don't think that they're going to move Bryce Turang off of second base at this point. Even if Willie does presumably leave in free agency, which, I think is unfortunately likely. I think that they'd be more inclined to move Joey Ortiz to shortstop than Bryce Turang off of second base. I mean, Bryce Turang not only won the Gold Glove and the Platinum Glove, but he did it at a position that he didn't even play in the minor leagues hardly. So it's so impressive. But I don't think that they're going to move him back, despite his ability to do that. I just think that he's solidified himself to the point where they're not going to ask him to move. So I would think that Joey Ortiz would be a far more likely candidate to move to shortstop if indeed Willie does leave. And I'm not going to close the door on the possibility that Willie does come back either on a maybe shorter term deal, higher average annual value deal. But if he does likely leave, I think it's Ortiz at shortstop.
I will agree with you that given the fact they just wear that platinum glove, honor, it'd be really foolish in my opinion to move him off second base. And I think they'll leave him stick there. And Joey Ortiz would be our starting shortstop if indeed we don't bring back Adames, which seems likely, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And so what about, and then Sal Frelick, and again, won the Gold Glove as an outfielder. Now we have Christian Yelich coming back from injury. We also have Jackson Trio, obviously, and Garrett Mitchell as part of the outfield mix. That leaves someone with DH at bats, most likely Christian Yelich. But there's also been some scuttlebutt, I guess, about Sal Frelick possibly giving an actual full-time go this time as our third baseman, since that is one question mark, pretty much the only question mark position on the offense going in the 2025 season. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I've been proven wrong many times by the Brewers front office where they do not do what I would do, but and they've proven to be correct. So I'm not going to criticize whatever turns out happening, but I do think that Frelick is going to stay in the outfield at this point. I think that they toyed with it just a little bit in spring training last year, kind of not knowing what you're going to have with Joey Ortiz. I think that Ortiz's bat plays well enough now where you can rely on him as a major league starter, even though he's likely moving to shortstop. I'm more inclined to think that the Brewers go out and get a third baseman, whether through trade or free agency, I'm not sure, but I think that the Brewers could plug that hole a little bit easier and make Frelick kind of your floating fourth outfielder, or somebody that does start if Yelich does get more at bats as your DH. And, don't forget you've still got Blake Perkins in that mix as well, who also by all measures could have won a Gold Glove award, to be honest, with just the way that his defense was. So the Brewers are really good in the outfield right now. I just don't think that they're likely to mess with what's working, and clearly their outfield is working very well, and clearly their second baseman is working out very well. So for me, it's why would you change something that's not a problem?
Yeah, no, I agree that they'll probably keep him in the outfield. After you win a Gold Glove, I think you should have your position solidified after that point in your major league career, in my opinion. But with that being said, I mean, there's got to be somewhere to put Yelich in, because Mitchell's, given that he's healthy, will have a spot. And like I said, Blake Perkins will need some at bats, and Jackson Trio is pretty much penciled in for sure. So it's a number.
But we've talked about this so many times over the years, Craig. Like to me, this is a good problem to have, and you're always going to be dealing with injuries. Look at what happened this year. We lost Yelich in July. We lost Mitchell in March, for the first 3.5 months of the year. You lost, I think everybody was down at one point. I think Perkins had a stint on the DL. I think that, Sal Frelick, I can't remember if he was on the DL at all this year or not, but my point being is that you're never going to be able to rely on guys to stay healthy for the entire year. So you want that depth, and it's a really good problem for us to have 5 outfilders that are not only major league serviceable outfielders, but who I think are all excellent outfielders. And quite frankly, I think the Blake Perkins starts on most teams. I know his batting average, ended a little bit lower than you probably would have expected, but I think he's an outstanding outfielder, especially for a guy who's a fourth or fifth outfielder. So all these guys are going to get at bats. I would keep that core of 5 guys in the outfield. They're all going to play. They're all going to get at bats, and they're all going to, take turns when guys are on the DL. And I think that that's exciting that we've got, guys that can step right in, which I think that our depth this year is one of the reasons why this team was so consistently good and almost ran the wire from opening day until the final day of the season in first place in the NL Central.
Yeah, no, I agree with all those points. It's a nice problem to have, and it'll work itself out. And again, Christian Yelich will probably get most at bats at DH, especially with his back issue. Now, we should mention that Rhys Hoskins did pick up his player option for the 2025 season. So he's pretty much going to be penciled at first base and some DH at bats too. But for the most part, I think beyond next year, Christian Yelich, obviously still being under contract, was probably a good candidate to possibly move to first base. I don't want to say that's going to happen for sure, but he's obviously a candidate for that moving forward, which will, alleviate some of the outfield log jam, so to speak, with the young guys. But with that being said, sorry, what was that?
No, I didn't say anything, actually.
Oh, yeah. No, so yeah, we'll see. But speaking of injury prone, like you brought up, I would not be opposed to the Brewers entertaining the idea of trading Garrett Mitchell for possibly a young third baseman. I don't know if that's necessarily a match or possible or whatever, but obviously that would kind of really fit but again, we'll see what happens. I think that the Brewers will be fairly active in the trade market this offseason. I agree with you. Willie Donovan is probably, unfortunately, as good as gone. We did offer him a qualifying offer, which he did not accept. So, yeah. And then Devin Williams, he's under one more year of team control. I think in the next podcast, we'll get more into the details on what we might think we'll get as a return package for him. But what % chance would you put on that you feel Brewers will be trading Devin Williams this offseason?
I think it's about 50-50. I think that you certainly could see him moved. I don't think it's necessary to move him either. I think that the Brewers are, they've got some payroll wiggle room. I think that our overall payroll in 2024 was significantly lower than the previous couple of years. So you've got some wiggle room. I don't think he's unaffordable. In fact, I think that he just picked up his option for what, less than $6 million, I think it was, or something like that. But
yeah,
he's not going to arbitration, is my point. So I think you've got an affordable all-star level reliever who's former two-time winner of the NL Reliever of the Year award. So to me, it makes a ton of sense to keep him, unless you get blown away in a trade, and that could always happen. But I say that for anybody, Christian Yelich or Jackson Churio too. You're just more likely to trade guys as they approach free agency, obviously. But I think I'd still have to be pretty overwhelmed at this point. I still think you could get something for him at the deadline in theory, if the Brewers were not in the race. But with the team that we had last year, it being, the division winners, and we'll see how this offseason plays out. I don't foresee us taking a huge step back this offseason, fortunately. We've got younger guys who are now veterans, or at least coming into that veteran status, who've got another year of experience under their belt. And I'm looking for breakout seasons from some guys like Joey Ortiz, for instance. And I think that Devin is going to be a big part of that mix, unless we get blown away in a trade. So I would be inclined to keep him. I know that his season ended poorly. Obviously, that's a pretty devastating thing to come back from. But I do think that to just, kind of forsake him based on that appearance instead of, looking at his longer track record, I think would be a huge mistake. And if we do trade him, we better get some incredible value for him.
I mean, this has nothing to do with the fact that he did below the wild card game, but I'm going to actually put it that it's an 80% chance, 20% not that he will be traded this offseason, just because I think that the Brewers have a smart front office, and again, keeping him might be the smart play, but I feel that they will be blown away with a trade package offer, and that they'll probably be able to accept on that, and also the fact that they feel that that's obviously you can't replace an NL reliever of the year level closer easily, but I do think that they feel they have some internal options that would work, mainly Trevor McGill and Abner Uribe that could step up and fill those roles as close.
But we don't know Uribe's health status either. I mean,
That's
he's coming
true.
off of a injury-plagued season, and I think that you lose a lot of depth by losing Devin Williams. And I know that you can develop, back into the bullpen relievers in theory a little bit easier than some of their positions. I grant that, and that's what we did with Trevor McGill. That being said, until Uribe's health has worked out, I don't know if I would. He wasn't necessarily stellar in his time in Milwaukee last year either, to be totally honest. I mean, he's got all the stuff in the makings of a great reliever, but it's not there yet. And I would be a little hesitant to rely on him as your eighth inning guy at this point, but that's just me.
Yeah. And no, I agree with that. And the Brewers do have a nice young core, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary that they get a good return. It's not like they're in a rebuilding stage, like the White Sox or a team like that, which would be absolutely idiotic to hold on to a closer of this value when you really need it to restock your farm or your future. The Brewers, in my opinion, are in an advantageous position to not have to do that. With that being said, it's something that they will. But we shall see how it plays out, and maybe we can look at some potential targets or some potential trade partners on our next podcast. But that's my thoughts on that. But I mean, I hope you're right and that they keep that one, because I'd love to be, bringing back a real strong team next year. Like I said, we're bringing back. I should also point out one thing that's happened. Were you surprised at all by the release of Colin Ray?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, he seemed like a real steady innings eater. Very not actually a grade up from serviceable. Certainly outperformed, I think, many people's expectations. He was certainly affordable. So I don't really know what we were doing with that. There's still a chance that he comes back, but I just don't know. I don't really know what we were thinking. But the Brewers front office has consistently shown that they do have a plan. That they, are very focused on depth. So I guess I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I don't really fully understand what that was all about, except maybe some roster flexibility. But I personally would not have made that move.
Yeah, no, it's very similar to how they, cut bait on Adrian Hauser and kind of gave away the Mets for nearly nothing last year.
Which they turned out to be correct about for what it was worth. Adrian had a very terrible year last year, and the Mets
Yeah,
got rid
so
of him
my
by
my feeling is their
June.
internal evaluation is and kudos to Ray, who really gave us some really valuable innings this in 2024 and even 2023 actually, but it really was part of
Yeah,
a big part of our success as a team. But with that being said, I think that they feel that he is closer to replacement level and that they have some younger guys with upside that they prefer to give the innings to. I guess that's my first evaluation of it. But like you said, maybe they'll still even bring him back. But I was a little bit taken brought back and surprised because again, what's the old adage? You can never have too much pitching, and especially the importance
yeah,
of depth at the price
yeah.
that he was at. I mean, and not only that, but
But maybe they saw something. To your point, maybe they saw something in September because his numbers in September were not nearly as good as his numbers in May, June, July. And I'm wondering if the league saw something as well, kind of caught up to him, and the Brewers don't think that he might. And again, I'm just totally speculating, but maybe they don't think that he's got the stuff to overcome what the league was starting to pick up on. I don't really know, and we're gonna have to talk to our anonymous source Tom Carter to figure out what's really going on with Ray. But that's kind of my 2 cents without talking to Tom, who hasn't talked to us for a little while.
yeah, absolutely. But it wouldn't. With that being said, one big part of our rotation going forward, I really feel that did emerge this past season was Tobias Myers, and I really feel that I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes in the top 10 in the NL Rookie of the Year voting as well
Yeah,
coming up here.
absolutely, he should. So he definitely should. He put up great numbers, and you know, honestly, if it wasn't for Paul Skeens, I think he would be hyped as one of the better rookie starting pitchers in all of baseball. He's not getting much hype still around the league, which I'm fine with. I think that it's good to, stay under the radar a little bit. But yeah, I'm very excited for Tobias Myers' future in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I really think that he's got a pretty nice ceiling that he hasn't hit, and what a find by the Brewers front office. And like I said, supposedly we might get Woodruff back from injury, which would be great. And then we've got other guys coming back from injury like Robert Gasser, and then a couple other lefties that their roles we just don't know. If they're going to be in the bullpen or rotation or some hybrid of both. And
Yeah.
of course, Dale Hall and Aaron Ashby also. So.
Well, and Jacob Mizorowski, Craig. I mean, that's the other guy I wanted to mention, and maybe Mizorowski, if he's ready to be at that back end of the bullpen, maybe that does allow us to trade Devin at that point. That's the one aspect of that, that I think makes that scenario even a little bit more likely, and could facilitate a trade where the Brewers save a little bit of money and also get some prospects back or Major League Ready talent back, and then Mizorowski plugs into the back end of the bullpen. Where do you think Mizorowski is going to fit on next year's team?
I personally would have liked to see them leave Mizorowski in the rotation in the minor leagues and let him have a chance to do that, but let him fail first before converting him to bullpen. But it sounds like the Brewers might have already determined that he does not have the control to be a starting pitcher and already transitioning him to the back end of the bullpen, which would be great, valuable asset and a possible future replacement for like a Devin Williams with a very high upside as a closer. But with that being said, I still think he's got like ace/number 2 potential. If you were to leave him in the rotation, he can figure things out that way. And I prefer that. I think that's more valuable to a Major League Baseball team overall before they totally cut bait on him. But again, I'm not part of their scouting department. I'm not seeing his development path, but I still think he's young enough that they should. But with that being said, he's made all the way to AAA and he's near Major League Ready. At some point, they've got to give him a defined role. And so we'll see what happens going forward with him, but he's an exciting prospect to have in this organization, and that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of envisioning that back into the bullpen. I mean, if you do put him in the pen, the Brewers could realistically come at you at some point next season if we keep Devin with Edgar Uribe, Trevor McGill, Mizorowski, and Devin. I mean, that's a hell of a back four guys to come out of your pen. And it reminds me of the 2011 bullpen where you had, Axford and K-Rod and Saito and just this, host of guys that you would never want to face if you're an opposing batter, locked down after the fifth.
Yeah, and I should point out to Brewer fans that we're trying to stay hopeful that because of our crowded outfield, most likely we will not be probably offering Juan Soto a contract this offseason.
No,
there's just no
probably.
there's just no room for him in the outfield or possibly in our budget. I'm not sure about that, but
we got a Gold Glover in right field. So what do you need Juan Soto for?
Yeah, exactly. You don't need him. We got Frelick. So yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, unfortunately, I was gonna have to kind of wrap it up for this podcast. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Vince.
No, just continue to give us a follow on Twitter. Brew Crew Review 1 is our Twitter handle. We'll be very active on there this off season. We've continued with our Brewers Birthday series here. There's a little bit less Major League Baseball news, but we'll certainly be on top of everything with our co-hosts Scott and Chad. So much appreciated for your continued support. Send any questions to Scott at our Brew Crew Review podcast with us at gmail.com email address, and I'm sure he'll get to those on one of these episodes.
All right. Stay classy, baseball fans, and go Brewers.
All right, guys. Thanks. Thanks, Gregory. Go Brewers.